Okay, Minister Bethlenfalvy is about to stand up in the legislature to deliver that fall economic statement. We're going to take you there to Queen's Park now live and listen in.
Recognize the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to present a report from the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs and move its adoption.
Ms. Hogarth from the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs presents the committee's report as follows and moves its adoption. Your committee begs to report the following bill without amendment, Bill PR2, an Act to revive 405-456 Ontario Limited.
The report be received and adopted. Agreed? Agreed. Reports by committee. Introduction of government bills. I recognize the Government House Leader, Minister of Long-Term Care and Minister of Legislative Affairs.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Repeal the Keeping Students in Class Act 2022 and that it now be read for the first time.
Calandra has moved that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Repeal the Keeping Students in Class Act 2002, and that it now be read for the first time. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carry? Carried.
This is a bill entitled An Act to Repeal the Keeping Students in Class Act 2022. First reading of the bill. Première lecture du projet de loi.
Does the Minister care to briefly explain his bill?
Thank you, Speaker. Self-explanatory. The bill allows us to continue working with our friends in education to ensure that our kids are in school, remain in school. Thank you.
Introduction of government bills. I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to enact and amend various statutes, and that it now be read for the first time.
Bethlenfalvy has moved that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to enact and amend various statutes, and then it now be read for the first time. It's the pleasure of the House that the motion carry. Carried.
This is a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to enact and amend various statutes. First reading of the bill. Première lecture du projet de loi.
And would the Minister of Finance want to briefly explain his bill?
I will have more to say during statements by the Ministry.
Thank you. Introduction of government bills. Introduction of bills. Statements by the Ministry. I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last year, when I delivered the fall 2021 fall economic statement in the legislature, it was the same day we paid tribute to a great leader and great premier of the province of Ontario, the Honourable Bill Davis. Bill Davis is still with us in this legislature, and he casts a very long shadow. From Ontario's college system to healthcare expansion to seeing the province through economic hardship, he believed in province building and nation building. And just like Premier Davis before him, Premier Ford is building this great province with Ontario's plan to build. And today, Mr. Speaker, it is my privilege to stand before my colleagues, old and new, to provide an update on the progress we have made on our plan to build Ontario.
Today, I am honored to be here with my old and new colleagues to let you know about the progress that we've made with our plan to build Ontario.
And together, we have come so far. Together, we've invested in Ontario's automotive and manufacturing capacity and supply chain to become a North American leader in building electric and hybrid vehicles and battery manufacturing. Together, we're unlocking the economic potential of critical minerals and the ring and fire of the North, and connecting them to our world-class manufacturing capabilities in Southern Ontario. We're building roads, we're building highways, we're building subways, and we're building bridges, Mr. Speaker. And together, we've trained thousands of workers through significant investments in skills training. Together, we're keeping costs down for families, for workers, and our seniors. And together, we're expanding our healthcare workforce with more doctors, more nurses, and more personal support workers. And we're well underway on delivering on the largest expansion of long-term care beds in this province's history. Mr. Speaker, in our 2022 Ontario Economic Outlook and Fiscal Review, we are tabling the first ever Building Ontario Progress Report. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, in this Fall Economic Statement 2022, we are presenting the first report on Building Ontario.
To build Ontario's economy, we're making progress in attracting investments and good jobs. Over the last 2 years, we've attracted more than $16 billion, including $12.5 billion in electric vehicles and EV manufacturing of batteries right here in the province. And, Mr. Speaker, $2.5 billion in investments that will help make the province a world producer of clean steel. Mr. Speaker, we released Ontario's first ever critical mineral strategy to support better supply chain connections in Northern and Southern Ontario. And we are progressing on the roads to the Ring of Fire by supporting ongoing environmental assessment led by Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation for both the Martin Falls Community Access Road and the Webequie Supply Road. Mr. Speaker, we continue to call on the federal government to be a full partner in the Ring of Fire and match our investment. To build Ontario's workforce, we're making progress in training and educating students and workers to succeed today and tomorrow. The first 2 rounds of the Skills Development Fund delivered 388 training projects, helping more than 393,000 workers take the next steps in their careers. And we've already added over 11,700 healthcare workers to the system, including nurses and personal support workers. And after 2 years of the pandemic disruptions, our government launched its plan to catch up. So students are in classrooms learning, preparing for the jobs of the future. Mr. Speaker, to build infrastructure for Ontario, we're making progress by getting shovels in the ground on critical projects all across Ontario. As I stand here, preliminary fieldwork is already underway for Highway 413, and early construction work has started on the Bradford Bypass. Mr. Speaker, we have completed construction at the Unionville and the Rutherford GO stations. And that's not all, Mr. Speaker. We broke ground and announced the preferred proponent teams for 2 key contracts on the Ontario line. We've also invested over $950 million in nearly 190 broadband, cellular, and satellite projects, bringing access to over 375,000 Ontario homes and businesses. And, Mr. Speaker, to keep costs down, our government eliminated license plate renewal fees as well as license plate stickers and refunded the past 2 years of fees for eligible vehicles, Mr. Speaker. We continue to help make life more affordable for nearly 8 million vehicle owners in Ontario. We've saved and continue to save money for Ontario households by temporarily cutting the gas tax and fuel tax starting on July 1st, 2022. And, Mr. Speaker, to secure our long-term prosperity, we must increase supply. That means building hospitals and housing, building highways and roads, and delivering manufacturing capacity in this province. And that is exactly what our government is doing. Each and every day, we're getting it done. We're continuing to say yes to building Ontario's economy. Yes, to building Ontario's workforce. Yes, to building Ontario's infrastructure. And yes, to keeping costs down for Ontario families and businesses. But, Mr. Speaker, these are uncertain economic times. In 2022, Ontario's consumer price inflation reached a near 40-year high. La conjoncture économique.
The economic situation is unsure. In 2022, DPCI reached a peak that we hadn't reached in 40 years.
Because of the consequences of a worldwide pandemic. Russia's illegal war on the Ukraine, which has caused supply disruptions right across various industries. And while inflation eased somewhat in September, the Bank of Canada increased interest rates another 50 basis points, Mr. Speaker. And the cost of groceries and other everyday goods continues to remain stubbornly high. Taken together, the year ahead is likely to be marked by ongoing economic turbulence and a slowdown in growth. Understandably, this is putting financial pressure on families, workers, and seniors. This is why our government has a responsible fiscal plan which will help us navigate these uncertain times, Mr. Speaker. This is why, no matter what lies ahead, I have the confidence in the resilience of Ontario's economy, its workers, and its people, and I have confidence in our plan. Now, Mr. Speaker, our fall economic statement also includes new targeted measures to advance our plan. After over 300,000 manufacturing jobs were lost under the previous government, our government is using the strength of our supply chains to support globally competitive, homegrown manufacturing. And manufacturers are looking for ways to remove emissions from supply chains. That is why we're proposing to launch a voluntary clean energy credit registry that will boost competitiveness and attract jobs. Mr. Speaker, I even got a smile under that mask from Mike Schreiner across the way. Mr. Speaker, this will also give businesses another tool to achieve their environmental and sustainability goals. Mr. Speaker, we're also refocusing our approach to cutting red tape, to clear up supply chain delays, as well as support Ontario's agri-food system, so we can get goods and services to customers faster and help create more jobs. Now, Mr. Speaker, our government knows that Main Street, Ontario matters, and that's why we're proposing to increase the number of small businesses that could benefit from the small business tax rate. This change will lower costs for small businesses, providing $185 million in income tax relief over the next 3 years. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the incredible potential of each and every person in this province. And people living with a disability shouldn't be punished for working. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing to increase the amount a person on the Ontario Disability Support Program, also known as ODSP, that they can earn from $200 to $1,000 support per month. And, Mr. Speaker, this will not impact their other plentiful income tax supports that they deserve. Mr. Speaker, this measure would encourage people with a disability who want to increase their work hours to do so and promote more participation in the workforce while not penalizing them for doing so. It would allow the approximately 25,000 individuals currently in the workforce to keep more of their earnings and could encourage as many as 25,000 more to participate in the workforce. Mr. Speaker, our government also recognizes that there are many ODSP recipients who cannot work and that they need our continued support. That is why in August we announced a 5% increase to ODSP rates. And going forward, we plan to adjust ODSP rates to inflation beginning in July 2023. So when the cost of living increases, income support would increase as well. Nous entendons ajuster les prestations.
We want to adjust the ODSP rates according to inflation, and this starting in July 2023. So when the cost of living increases, income support would increase as well.
And as we increase support for ODSP recipients, we also must look at reforms so we can improve access and make sure those who need the support can get it faster. Mr. Speaker, we want everyone who is able and wants to pursue a job to know that their government is in their corner. And that is why we are investing in skills training. Through our Skills Development Fund, Mr. Speaker, we have supported groundbreaking programs and connect job seekers. Through our efforts in the skills and training, we're ensuring that they have the skills that they need to pursue new opportunities. And I'm pleased to announce today that we are investing an additional $40 million for the latest round of this program. This brings our total funding to a record $145 million. Mr. Speaker, the skilled trades present an opportunity for a successful career for thousands upon thousands of people, especially high school students. And I'm pleased to share that our government is expanding the dual credit program, creating direct pathways for high school students seeking a career in the trades or in early childhood education. This gives students the opportunity to complete credits toward both the Ontario Secondary School Diploma and College Credential or Certificate of Apprentices so that they can begin work earlier. Mr. Speaker, there is a future in Ontario for the young people in the trades. As well, Mr. Speaker, we know that these are challenging times, financial times, for many in our province. This government understands the last thing the people of Ontario right now need is a tax increase at the pumps. That is why we are proposing to extend the gas and fuel tax cuts until December 31st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, extending these cuts would mean households of this province would save $195 on average between July 1st, 2022 and December 31st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, seniors built this province, and we owe them all a debt of gratitude. So thank you. But for too many low-income seniors, covering day-to-day costs has become a source of anxiety. Our government is proposing to double payments for all senior recipients of the Ontario Guaranteed Annual Income System program for 2023. Mr. Speaker, this will provide a maximum increase of almost $1,000 per person for low-income seniors for the year. Mr. Speaker, our government also recognizes that we are facing a difficult road ahead, and an economic slowdown in the near term is very real. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, our government knows that the way ahead will bring us many challenges, and an economic slowdown is very real.
When faced with this degree of uncertainty, we need to be flexible and forward-thinking. With a fiscal plan that is ready to support people and businesses when and if the time comes, while also laying a strong foundation for future generations. But for too long, previous governments have allowed our structural deficits to grow. Previous governments added almost $200 billion to Ontario's debt, and what do they have to show for it? Enough highways? No. Enough transit?
No.
More hospitals?
No.
More nurses and personal support workers?
No.
Our government, Mr. Speaker, is taking a different path. We're taking a responsible and targeted approach making record investments in the priorities that matter to the people of Ontario. Mr. Speaker, Ontario's projected deficit in 2023 is $12.9 billion. This is an improvement of $6.9 billion from the 2022 budget. Mr. Speaker, eliminating Ontario's deficit while delivering on Ontario's plan to build is a critical part of our government's long-term vision for this province. After unprecedented spending in response to the pandemic, now is the time for governments to show restraint, to act cautiously and responsibly. Irresponsible spending today will only make inflation more painful and drag out the economic downturn. The economic road ahead will not be easy, and Ontario is not an island, and we will not be immune to it. But, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing we cannot do together, no challenge that we cannot meet, no obstacle we cannot overcome. Whatever the economic uncertainty may bring, our government has a plan. And just like Bill Davis did so many years ago, under the leadership of Premier Ford, we are building a stronger province. And no matter what the obstacles we may face, we are steadfast, Mr. Speaker, because one thing I am sure of is the strength and resilience of the people of this great province. Together, Mr. Speaker, let's get it done. Let's build Ontario. Thank you.
All right, rousing applause there for Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy as he introduces Ontario's plan to build a progress update, aka the fall economic statement.